The Eglinton LRT has been all over the news for its long delays, budget overruns, and construction problems. But how bad is it compared to other LRT projects in the province's history? Let's take a look at a couple of other LRT projects to make that comparison. So back in 2007, under David Miller's administration in Toronto, the TTC's Eglinton LRT Line 5 was announced. At the time, the idea of a light rail operating east to west along Eglinton Avenue seemed like a very promising compromise to service the residents of Toronto instead of the very expensive subway that was cancelled by the previous government. So in 2011, construction began on this 25-stop line running between Mount Dennis and Kennedy, going east to west, that was estimated to be completed by 2020. The original budget that was set for this line was $9.1 billion. In 2020, the project was delayed into 2021. In 2021, it was delayed until 2022. In 2022, it was then delayed further until 2023. And today, it has been delayed indefinitely with no completion date being given. This is all while the project cost has increased to $12.8 billion. Furthermore, it has been discovered that there were issues with the track alignments in some segments of the track that were off. The platform at Sloan Stop needed to be replaced as it was uneven, and 66 other safety or construction issues were found with the project. But is it fair for us to be critical of Metrolinx for all these issues, or is this the norm in the LRT construction business? Well, to find out, let's take a look at a few other LRT construction projects for comparison. The first that we'll take a look at is the ION LRT in the Waterloo region. So the ION LRT project in Waterloo was announced in 2014. This was planned as an above-ground LRT with 19 stops, estimated to cost about $818 million. In 2017, there was a budget overrun of $50 million. The project was completed in 2019 with the first LRT running on the route on June 21, 2019. This project was announced years later and completed years earlier than Toronto's Eglinton LRT line and only had 6 less stops. For our second comparison, let's take a look at Ottawa's Confederation Line. This is maybe a better comparison, as this is also being built by Metrolinx, the same company that is responsible for building the Eglinton LRT, and has ever since been plagued with issues. So the Confederation Line was announced in 2012, with construction starting in 2013. This was planned to be a 13-stop LRT that went both above and underground in some locations, with initial estimated cost of $2.1 billion. It was supposed to be open in May of 2018, but after delay, it finally saw its first day of operation in September of 2019. Now, the Confederation Line did have budget overruns, but the number does get a bit confusing as they did combine these with the Trillium Line too. But let's just be charitable and say that they finished it for the planned cost, as we will use this for our comparison. Now, I know that this will be an oversimplification because it is not apples to apples, as there are variations that have to be taken into consideration, but let's do this anyways. The total time per station comparisons are as follows. The Waterloo LRT took 5 years for 19 stops, the Ottawa LRT took 5 years for 13 stops, and the Toronto LRT took 12 years so far for 25 stops and counting. So now let's put this into some simple math. The Waterloo LRT took 0.26 years per stop, the Ottawa LRT took 0.38 years per stop, and the Toronto's Eglinton LRT has so far taken 0.48 years per stop to complete. So now let's take a look at the cost per stop comparison. The Waterloo LRT cost a total of $818 million at a cost of $43 million per stop. The Ottawa Confederation Line costed a total of $2.1 billion, totaling $160 million per stop. The Eglinton LRT has so far cost a total of $12.8 billion, a total cost of $512 million per stop. Now, I do realize that there are some huge differences between these LRT lines, so it's not fair to draw comparisons between these. The Waterloo LRT was really simple and easy to build, relatively. It was all above ground and had relatively simple stops. The Confederation Line in Ottawa does go underground downtown and has grade separation in most locations. On the other hand, the Eglinton LRT goes at ground level at some locations and underground at others. Construction along Eglinton Avenue is no simple task, where it also requires the moving and rebuilding of some of the roads. The most intricate part of this line is making the Eglinton Yonge Station. This station has to be connected underground to an existing live subway station that was built in 1954. There's no oversimplifying that. But that all said, if we compare the Eglinton LRT to the Ottawa's Confederation Line, which is the closest of the two, it is still more than 3 times the cost per stop and is taking 20% longer to complete. I might be able to give some leeway for the delay since it was a more complicated project to build the Eglinton LRT than the other two, but the Eglinton Crosstown line to be costing 3 times more than that of a stop for Ottawa's Confederation Line is, I think, absurd. The stops or stations on the Confederation Line are even more elaborate looking and complex than some of the regular stops planned for the Eglinton Crosstown LRT. It's no wonder that residents in Toronto are outraged about how the Eglinton LRT is going. Currently, the Crosstown was supposed to be opened for summer of 2022, and now it has been extended to no specified completion date. This line was supposed to be serving everyone in the city by now and has ended up serving nobody so far. Furthermore, it came to everyone's shock when an anonymous but credible source reported to the media outlets in Toronto from inside Metrolinx that confirmed off the record that the province had told them not to talk to the media about the project and what was really going on. Personally, I think it would be better if the Government of Ontario gave us more information about what is going on with the Eglinton LRT. It has now been 3 years overdue, and the grass along the tracks needs to be trimmed and maintained, but there's no LRT service running. They should at least communicate with the public and explain to us what the problem is, and why they cannot give us a new opening date. I think that this project has been the biggest catastrophe in our city's transit history. It is not only affecting transportation in the city from east to west, which is very much so needed, but businesses and the economy are continuing to suffer as we all remain locked into a dark room with no exit by the government. Thanks for watching, and happy transiting.